All right, so we've been following Joe Biden's completely worthless negotiations with the Republican Party as he is trying to pass through this infrastructure package that he's putting forward. And I do that in quotations because these entire negotiations have been completely pointless. He's not going to get anything out of it. The Republican Party is never going to vote for this infrastructure package. And so he's just watering it down and watering it down further for basically no reason at all other than the fact that he is an austerity-minded dipshit who doesn't want to actually invest what this country needs right now in this moment in infrastructure. And so Jamaal Bowman went on CNN yesterday and he did an interview with Aaron Burnett where he basically outlines the current situation perfectly. So let's go ahead and listen to what he had to say, and then we can talk about the actual concrete actions that the squad can take in order to ensure that this isn't a completely pathetic infrastructure package. So here we go.
Jamaal Bowman of New York. And Congressman, I appreciate your time. So Biden tonight, meets with Senator Capito and says no to her latest offer, but he'd already agreed to cut the price tag nearly in half and to drop that corporate tax increase. Do you think he should go back on those terms, try to push the price tag back up?
So Biden ran on an infrastructure bill that was north of $2 trillion. Yep. Because that was the number, progressives organized across the country to make sure Biden won the election, specifically in Georgia, in Michigan, and places like Pennsylvania. To go from over $2 trillion to $1.7 trillion should never have been done. And to try to cut it further definitely should not be done. We have 100-year-old infrastructure. We have children getting lead poisoning from drinking out of lead pipes. We have public housing that hasn't received any money from the federal government in over 10 years. And when you speak to climate organizers and activists and scholars and infrastructure scholars, they say the number needs to be much higher. This is our New Deal moment. We have just lost over 600,000 people due to COVID in 1 year. We lost that many people in the Civil War over 4 years. What was our response? It was the Homestead Act. It was the Industrial Revolution. We invested in bringing the American economy back. We need to do the same thing now, beginning with the working people in our most marginalized communities.
So, okay, so I understand where you stand on this, but the thing about Biden is, even though he said no to the latest GOP proposal tonight, after speaking with the lead Republican negotiator, he is going to speak to Senator Capito again on Monday. So should he even be doing that? I mean, I understand there's lots of ways to look at this, but I can look at it and say, going from 1.7 trillion to 1 trillion, when the other side goes from 250 billion to 300 billion, one side's moving a lot more than the other, and the two sides are still really far apart.
So I question why we're even deciding to negotiate with the Republicans. Republicans have not tried to negotiate with us in good faith since Biden has been in the White House. They pushed the big lie, which led to the insurrection. They voted to overturn the election results. It did not support an impeachment, even though Donald Trump was clearly at fault there. I understand, wanting to engage in bipartisanship, but they have not negotiated with us and tried to engage with us in good faith since this session has begun. We can use reconciliation to get this done. We have enough Democratic votes, and we need to do so because the American people sent us there to deliver. And as Democrats, we have to deliver. That is how we win the midterms next year, not negotiating with Republicans who do not want to negotiate in good faith.
Okay, so I understand.
Right, so I'll pause it right there. But basically, I mean, listen, everything that he just said was completely true, right? We've been seeing these ridiculous comparisons between Joe Biden and FDR. And listen, if you want to be the next FDR, then what does this political moment call for? Well, after the Great Depression, FDR did a bunch of massive investments in things like infrastructure. And so Joe Biden can do that same thing, but he's not even anywhere close to that. And as Jamaal Bowman pointed out there, the $2 trillion plan that Joe Biden put forward was already the compromise, right? I've talked about this in my videos repeatedly. The American Society for Civil Engineers, the actual experts on this issue, estimate that we need to spend about $5 trillion by 2025 in order to get our infrastructure up to a grade of a B+, okay? So not even outstanding infrastructure, just average infrastructure, when our current infrastructure is a grade of a D+ to a C-. So it's really a pathetic situation here that Joe Biden is drawing comparisons to FDR, and he's not even remotely close to what the experts say we actually need in this moment. So if you want to be the next FDR, then you're going to need to invest even more than $2 trillion over the next 8 years, which comes out to about a third of what we spend yearly on our military budget. So it's really just already a pathetic compromise. But again, he's compromising on top of that compromise, on top of that compromise, and for basically nothing. Jamaal Bowman was 100% right. The Republican Party is not operating in good faith on this issue at all whatsoever. So he's just wasting time, stalling, and he's not going to get anything material out of these negotiations. So this is what actually needs to happen, right? So Jamaal Bowman says here, if what I'm reading is is true, I would have a very hard time voting yes on this bill. $2 trillion was already the compromise. POTUS can't expect us to vote on an infrastructure deal dictated by the Republican Party. So this is pretty much it. This is the whole game right here, right? We've been talking about repeatedly, and I've had my criticisms of the squad of how they never get together as a coherent block of votes and refuse to vote for legislation if it's not bold enough, or actually block legislation if it's shitty legislation. And this is what needs to happen. Him, Jamaal Bowman, the rest of the squad, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, all of these members of Congress have the ability collectively, not as individuals, but collectively, in order to block this legislation. So why do we have a dynamic right now where Joe Biden is only going and negotiating with Republicans? He's only going and consulting the Joe Manchins and Kirsten Sinemas of the world instead of actually negotiating with the squad as well. We should have a counterbalance here at least. He really shouldn't even be talking to the Republican Party at all, again, because they're never going to vote for this regardless of how much he compromises. But we should not let the Overton window expand to just being the Republican Party to Joe Manchin. It should be between Joe Manchin and members of the squad like Jamaal Bowman. And so in order to do that, he needs to make this not only, saying I would have a very hard time voting yes. Him and other members of the squad actually need to get together and say, this is our red line in the sand. We will not vote for anything that is less than $2 trillion or whatever they say their red line in the sand is. So that's the actual concrete thing that they can do to take action on this. And it's exactly what they need to do. So they need to go directly to Joe Biden and say, we will not vote for this unless it has $2 trillion or more in investments. And really, it needs to be significantly higher than that. But that needs to be the red line in the sand. Get a coherent block of votes together and refuse to vote for it. And then guess what? He's not only going to be consulting Republicans and Democrats like Joe Manchin, but he's also going to have to consult you. So that's how politics works, believe it or not. It's not anything too crazy, but this is what they actually need to do. And I would love for, if the first time, at least that I've seen, the squad would actually get together as a coherent block and get together and block this legislation if it's anything less than what's acceptable at $2 trillion. So that's the plan. That's what needs to happen. There's really no excuses. Jamaal Bowman, get your squad together and actually act like a squad.